Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're taking a look at double-blind studies.
Oh, those are fascinating.
You guys sent in some really interesting material about them, and, it's really a cornerstone of clinical research.
Right.
And especially relevant for you as you're preparing for that CRA career.
Yeah, absolutely. Understanding these types of studies, I think, is essential for anyone involved in clinical research,
Right.
but especially crucial for aspiring CRAs.
Absolutely.
You're going to be, right there on the front lines, making sure the trials are conducted with the highest standards. And this all starts with understanding the principles of a good study design.
So let's get down to the basics here. What exactly is a double-blind study?
Yeah.
I know our source kind of defined it in a very straightforward way.
Yeah, in the most simple terms, a double-blind study means that both the researcher and the participant are completely in the dark about who is getting the actual treatment and who's getting a placebo. Kind of like a detective novel where the big reveal doesn't happen till the very end.
I like that.
Yeah?
I like that analogy. Very intriguing.
Yeah.
But why is this blinding so important?
Well, imagine you're testing a new drug for, let's say, high blood pressure.
Okay.
If the researchers know who's getting the real drug, they might unintentionally treat those participants differently, maybe by, I don't know, being more encouraging or attentive.
So their expectations could influence the outcome.
Exactly. And it's not just the researchers.
Oh.
Participants can be influenced too. If they know they're getting the real drug, they might report feeling better even if the drug isn't actually doing anything.
Right.
Just because they expect it to work.
That's the placebo effect, right?
Yeah.
Our source mentions that as a key reason why double-blind studies are considered the gold standard.
Yeah.
But eliminating bias isn't the only reason, is it?
No, it goes beyond just eliminating bias. Double-blind studies lead to more credible results because they remove so much of that subjectivity that can, creep into research. These are the kinds of studies that get published in those top-tier medical journals and ultimately influence how healthcare decisions are made.
So I'm thinking this all ties back to the CRA role. As a CRA, you're responsible for making sure the data that's collected during these clinical trials is good.
Right.
And double-blind studies are all about minimizing bias to get the most accurate results possible.
Precisely. It's like you're safeguarding the reliability of the entire study. Now, how is a double-blind study set up?
Yeah.
It's a pretty fascinating process.
Yeah, I'm curious to know how they pull it off.
Well, it starts with something called randomization.
Okay.
Let's say you have a group of participants for a clinical trial. You randomly assign them to either the treatment group, which receives that experimental drug, or the control group, which receives a placebo. It's kind of like shuffling a deck of cards to make sure everything's mixed up fairly. This randomness helps ensure that any differences in outcome between the groups are actually due to the treatment and not some pre-existing difference between the participants.
So it's like leveling the playing field right from the start.
Exactly. And once the participants are assigned to their groups, the blinding part really kicks in. The real drug and the placebo would need to look completely identical. Maybe they're pills of the same size and color.
Okay.
But one contains the active ingredient. The other one is just a sugar pill.
So how do they keep track of who is getting what if everything looks exactly the same?
That's where the coding comes in.
Okay.
The treatments are labeled with codes or numbers, and only a third party, someone completely independent of the research team, knows which code corresponds to the real treatment and which corresponds to the placebo. This ensures that neither the researchers interacting with the participants nor the participants themselves know who is getting what until the very end of the study.
Wow. That's quite a system. It definitely sounds like it would minimize the potential for bias.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it's not always easy to maintain this level of secrecy.
Right.
Our source did mention some potential downsides to these double-blind studies.
Yeah, there are some challenges.
Okay.
One of the biggest is the potential for unblinding.
Unblinding. So like someone accidentally reveals who got the real treatment and who got the placebo.
Exactly.
You don't know.
It could be, I don't know, like a careless comment from a researcher, a visible side effect that only the real treatment causes, or, any number of things. And even a small instance of unblinding can introduce bias and jeopardize the entire study.
Okay, so maintaining the blind is absolutely crucial. What are some other potential drawbacks?
Well, there can be difficulties, yeah.
It sounds like there's a lot of pressure to make sure that, things stay under wraps
Right,
with these tests. But even with these challenges, I can see why double-blind studies are considered so valuable. They really help to ensure that the research results are reliable. And trustworthy.
Absolutely. And that reliability is paramount in clinical research, especially when it comes to testing, new drugs and treatments. For aspiring CRAs like yourself, understanding these nuances is essential.
It makes sense. After all, CRAs play a key role in upholding those high standards throughout that clinical trial process.
Precisely. And speaking of high standards, the source material you sent also highlights another benefit of double-blind studies.
Okay.
They enhance the credibility of research findings.
Sure.
When you remove those subjective influences, the results are much more likely to be accepted by the scientific community, published in those respected journals, and ultimately impact healthcare practices.
So it's not just about protecting the integrity of a single study.
Right,
It's about building trust in the entire scientific process.
exactly. And this trust is essential for advancing medical knowledge and improving patient care. Now, I know you're interested in the CRA career path, so let's connect this back to your aspirations.
Yes, please. I'm eager to see how all of this relates to the day-to-day work of a CRA.
Okay, well, imagine you're a CRA overseeing a trial for a new heart medication. You'd be responsible for monitoring the study's progress,
Okay.
ensuring that the protocol is being followed correctly, and collecting accurate data from the participants.
That sounds like a lot of responsibility.
It is, and understanding double-blind methodology is key to fulfilling that responsibility effectively.
Right.
You need to be able to identify any potential threats to the blinding,
Yeah.
such as, inconsistencies in how treatments are administered or subtle cues that might reveal to participants which group they're in.
So it's like being a detective on the lookout for any clues that could compromise the study's integrity.
That's a great way to put it. You're constantly observing, analyzing, and ensuring that everything is aligned with the principles of a double-blind study. And your vigilance helps to protect the validity of the research findings, which ultimately impacts patient outcomes.
Wow, I hadn't thought about it that way before. It really underscores the importance of a CRA's role in safeguarding that reliability of clinical research.
Absolutely. And as we continue to explore the world of double-blind studies, I think you'll gain an even deeper appreciation for the complexities and nuances involved.
I'm ready to dive deeper.
Yeah.
What else can you tell me about how these studies are conducted in practice?
Well, one crucial aspect that we haven't touched upon yet is the importance of documentation and record keeping.
Documentation.
Hmm.
Why is that particularly important in double-blind studies?
Well, remember, in these studies, we're going to great lengths to maintain secrecy about who is receiving which treatment.
Right.
So meticulous documentation is essential to ensure that the blinding is maintained throughout the trial and that the data collected is accurate
Mm-hmm.
and reliable.
It makes sense that you'd need a clear and comprehensive record of everything that happened
Right.
to avoid any confusion or potential for bias.
Exactly. And this documentation goes beyond just recording what treatment each participant receives.
Okay.
It also includes
Okay, I'm curious. What kind of things?
things like noting any adverse events that participants experience, tracking any changes to their medication dosages, and documenting any communication between the research team and the participants. All of this information is crucial for maintaining the blind and ensuring the integrity of the study data.
So, as a CRA, you would be responsible for making sure all of this documentation is in order.
Precisely. You would be working closely with the research team to ensure that all the necessary information is recorded accurately, completely, and in a way that maintains the blinding. It's a meticulous process, but it's essential for generating trustworthy research findings.
I can definitely see how attention to detail and a commitment to accuracy would be vital skills for a CRA.
Absolutely. And these skills are especially critical when it comes to handling the data collected during a double-blind study. Remember, the whole point of blinding is to eliminate bias, and that includes bias in how the data is analyzed.
So even after the study is complete, there are still steps to take to ensure the results are unbiased.
Exactly. Once all the data is collected, it needs to be analyzed in a way that doesn't reveal which participants were in which group until after the analysis is complete.
Okay.
This is often done by assigning codes to the participants, so the statisticians analyzing the data are blind to the treatment assignments.
It sounds like there are a lot of safeguards in place to prevent bias from creeping in at any stage of the process.
That's right. And as a CRA, you would play a crucial role in upholding these safeguards, ensuring that the data is handled responsibly and that the research findings are reliable.
It's fascinating to see how all of these pieces fit together. I'm starting to get a real sense of the level of rigor and attention to detail required in clinical research, especially when it comes to double-blind studies.
And it's not just about the technical aspects. There's also an ethical dimension to consider.
Ethical considerations. Now, this sounds really interesting.
You see, with double-blind studies, it's essential to ensure that participants are fully informed about the nature of the study, even though they won't know whether they are receiving the treatment or a placebo.
So how do researchers balance the need for blinding with the ethical requirement of informed consent?
That's a great question, and it's one that researchers and ethics committees take very seriously. Before enrolling in a double-blind study, participants are given detailed information about the study's purpose, the potential risks and benefits of both the treatment and the placebo, and their right to withdraw from the study at any time.
That makes sense. But what happens if a participant starts experiencing side effects? How do they know whether it's due to the treatment or just a coincidence?
That's where careful monitoring and safety protocols come into play. Throughout the study, researchers closely monitor participants for any adverse events. If a participant experiences any significant issues, they can be unblinded and receive appropriate medical care.
So there's a balance between maintaining the blind and ensuring participant safety.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balance that requires careful consideration and constant vigilance. But it's also a testament to how seriously the ethical aspects are taken in this field.
It sounds like there are a lot of moving parts to consider when conducting a double-blind study.
There certainly are. It's a complex process that requires expertise in various areas, from study design and data analysis to ethical considerations and regulatory compliance. And this is where your training as a CRA will be invaluable.
I can see how all these pieces fit together. By understanding double-blind studies, CRAs are equipped to not only ensure the scientific integrity of the trials, but also to advocate for the well-being of the participants.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to emphasize that the world of clinical research is constantly evolving. New challenges and opportunities are emerging all the time.
So where do we go from here? What's the next step in our journey of understanding double-blind studies?
Well, a lot of researchers are exploring that right now. One of the most exciting developments is the integration of technology into clinical trials.
Technology. Tell me more.
So, for example, we're seeing an increasing use of electronic data capture systems,
Okay.
or EDC systems for short. These systems allow researchers to collect and manage data electronically, which reduces the risk of human error and makes the whole process more efficient.
So it's like streamlining that data collection process, making it more accurate and organized.
Exactly. And then there's the rise of wearable technology. Imagine a clinical trial where participants wear, let's say, smartwatches or fitness trackers that continuously monitor their heart rate, their activity levels, or even their sleep patterns. This real-time data collection provides researchers with incredibly valuable insights.
So it's like having a constant stream of information that's coming in that can really help researchers understand how participants are responding
Yes,
to the treatment in their everyday lives.
precisely. And these technological advancements have the potential to further enhance the blinding process. For example, some wearable devices can be programmed to deliver medication reminders or even dispense medication at specific times, all while keeping the participant blinded to whether they're receiving the active treatment or the placebo.
That's incredible. It sounds like technology is playing an increasingly important role in making these double-blind studies even more robust and reliable.
Right.
But I'm guessing there are still some challenges and areas where these studies can continue to evolve.
You're absolutely right. One challenge is adapting double-blind methodology to certain types of interventions. So, for example, imagine trying to conduct a double-blind study for a surgical procedure.
Okay.
It's pretty difficult to create a sham surgery that looks and feels identical to the real procedure without actually performing the surgery.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
It's easy to blind participants, if you're testing a new drug in a pill form.
Yeah.
But surgery is a whole different ballgame.
Exactly. Researchers are constantly innovating and coming up with creative solutions to tackle these challenges. Another area of ongoing discussion is the importance of diversity and representation in clinical trials.
Diversity. Why is that particularly important for double-blind studies?
Well, remember that the goal of these studies is to determine whether a treatment is truly effective.
Right.
For the findings to be generalizable to a wider population, the participants in the study need to represent a diverse range of ages, genders, ethnicities, and health backgrounds.
So it's about making sure that the results are relevant and applicable to as many people as possible.
Precisely. If a clinical trial only includes participants from a narrow subset of the population, the results might not hold true for everyone who could potentially benefit from the treatment.
That's a really important point. It highlights how double-blind studies, while incredibly powerful, are just one piece of a much larger puzzle when it comes to evaluating new treatments and making those informed healthcare decisions.
Absolutely, they provide crucial evidence, but it's essential to consider the broader context, including the diversity of the participants, potential sources of bias that might not have been completely eliminated, and other factors that could influence the findings.
Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground today,
Yeah.
from the historical origins of double-blind studies to the really exciting technological advancements that are shaping their future. But I think the most important takeaway for our listeners, especially those interested in becoming CRAs,
Mhm.
is the crucial role these studies play in ensuring the integrity
Right.
and reliability of clinical research.
I couldn't agree more. Understanding the principles of double-blind studies, their strengths, limitations, and how they are constantly evolving is essential for anyone involved in the development and evaluation of new treatments.
Yeah, it's almost like having a superpower. The ability to see through that fog of bias and uncover the truth about what works and what doesn't. And for aspiring CRAs, this understanding is, I think, particularly crucial as you'll be on the front lines of ensuring that clinical trials adhere to the highest standards of scientific rigor.
And with that superpower comes great responsibility. As a CRA, you'll be a guardian of scientific integrity, playing a key role in advancing medical knowledge and ultimately improving patient care. So, embrace the challenge, stay curious, and never stop learning.
That's fantastic. To all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of double-blind studies. Until next time, keep those curious minds engaged.